قد أفلح المؤمنون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. Respected Muslim brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Usually when I give these khutbahs, I don't like to talk about myself. However, in this introduction, I will be talking a little bit about myself, so do bear with me. For as long as I can remember, my favorite imam has always been Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba, salamullahi alayhi, second imam. And the reason why is because I love giving credit where credit is due. When it comes to the companions of Rasulullah, those of you who watched my top 10 series on that, as well as the companions of Imam Ali, I did my best to talk about the companions, for example, that you had never heard of, that you had never come across, because I want to give credit where credit is due, right? There are these righteous figures who contributed to the development of Islam, to the spread of Islam, to the development of our culture, our society as Muslims, that have gone unsung, we would say, that have not received the credit that they deserve. Among the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, there is a tendency, for example, to argue about, which Imam is the most madloom. But the reality is that all of our Imams are madloom. When I look at, my Shia brothers and sisters, I find it, very absurd for anyone to claim, for example, oh, Imam al-Hussein is more madloom than this Imam, or, this Imam is so madloom, no one talks about him. The reality is, it's like, we barely talk about all of our Imams. We barely talk about Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And this applies to all Muslims, by the way. I'm not just attacking the Shia. If we don't talk enough about our Imams and Rasulullah, imagine what we would say about the other sects in Islam. When it comes to the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, all of them are madloom in the sense that their biographies are not studied enough. When I ask people about Imam al-Kadhim, for example, most people are just going to tell me, oh, well, he's the one who was in prison, and that's about it. When I ask about, well, tell me about his life. Tell me what he looked like. Tell me about, for example, who his companions were. Tell me why he was sent to prison. People wouldn't be able to tell you. Me personally, the reason why I feel such a strong attachment to Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba is because Imam al-Hasan, every year, when I've asked this question since I was a little boy, I would ask the Shaykh, ask the Imam at my mosque, like, every year we do 10 days for Imam al-Hussein, and then 40 days later we do Arba'in, which is a big thing. But Imam al-Hussein was the younger brother. He was the younger brother. What about his older brother, Imam al-Hasan? How come we don't talk about Imam al-Hasan? And then they would complain. It's like, oh, well, people don't care about Imam al-Hasan. People don't like to discuss Imam al-Hasan. Salamullahi alayhi. Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba's life, when you read over it, when you locate the sources for it, you realize that his life is not only very rich in that we have a lot of biographical information about him, but you also realize that Imam al-Hasan salamullahi alayhi is without a doubt one of our greatest Imams. He is the Sayyid. He is the generous one. He is the one with impeccable character. He is the one who rises above those around him. He is the one who, in some ways, makes the ultimate sacrifice. I remember that when I was researching into Imam al-Hasan's life, Imam al-Hasan salamullahi alayhi does not take to the battlefield anywhere near as much as his father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi, did. You will be hard-pressed to find examples of Imam al-Hasan on the battlefield. There are a few, and I can show them to you, inshallah. But Imam al-Hasan, for example, some people are like, oh, he's not as brave as his father. Like, first of all, no one is brave as Amir al-Mu'mineen. The only person who's braver than Amir al-Mu'mineen is Rasulullah Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But Imam al-Hasan's bravery, Imam al-Hasan's biography, when you look over it, you realize that he is indeed one of the bravest people who ever lived. Why? Because Imam al-Hasan had enough courage to make the right decision when the rest of the world was mocking him for it. Do you know how much courage it takes to give up your kingdom, to give up your mulk in order to save the Muslim ummah? Most people today would never do that. If you look at the world today, there are people willing to go to war. There are people willing to sacrifice thousands of lives to destroy people's dreams, their livelihood, to affect the development of future generations for a long time to come, all because they want to hold on to power. It takes a significant amount of selflessness and courage to say, for the greater good, for the sake of saving people's lives, for the sake of maintaining peace, I will give up that which most people would never give up. That is Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba, salamullah alayh. And it is for this reason that he is madloom, is that he saved the ummah and the ummah barely talks about him. And so when we research Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba, one of the interesting facts that comes up about him and that is still debated and discussed to this day, and I figured I would throw my hat into the ring regarding it, is the issue of his marriages, is the issue of Imam al-Hasan's marital life. Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba, the main view that is spread today among the Muslim ummah is that Imam al-Hasan, unlike his father Amir al-Mu'mineen, who is this very political, very fierce man, Imam al-Hasan is more mellow. He's more soft. He doesn't like the politics of it all. He prefers to sit down and eat with his friends. He prefers to stay out of the limelight. He was the most eligible bachelor of his time, so he spent all his money getting married and divorced until he died. This is the view that most people have of Imam al-Hasan, certainly the other sect in Islam. If you read, for example, Tarikh al-Khulafa by Suyuti, which is the English translation of this book by Abdul Samad Clark, he goes over the life of Imam al-Hasan, and this is something he goes over. He's like, al-Hasan loved to get married, and he gives you, all sorts of narrations about that. So, inshallah today, what I want to do is, in order to grow closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, and to grow closer to Rasulullah and his Ahlul Bayt, let's discuss Imam al-Hasan's marriages. Let's take a deep dive. Because, there are some topics that I'll tell people about. I'm like, that issue requires a much deeper look. That issue we cannot go over in 5 minutes. Well, alhamdulillah, today we're not going to spend 5 minutes going over it. We are going to spend as much time as is needed to go over this issue. We are going to have a critical examination of Imam al-Hasan's wives. Now, before we do so, there's one more thing I would like to add. What was the methodology used in doing this research? There is a book. I have discussed it many times with the brothers and sisters here in the server. It's called Madelung's Succession to Muhammad. And it is written by a non-Muslim. At one point in this book, at the very end of the book, Madelung goes over, he has this chapter called Excursion. He's like side stuff that I couldn't go over in the main book. So the last thing he goes over is the marriages of Imam al-Hasan, salamullahi alayh. So if any of you want to go back, you'll see that is one of the main sources that I used. So the primary sources regarding Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba's life are Ansab al-Ashraf by al-Baladhuri, very famous book. We use al-Kafi, you use Maqatil al-Talibiyin, and then you use an array of other sources to find biographical information. But the main source, the oldest source we have on the life of Imam al-Hasan, salamullahi alayh, as a history book, is Ansab al-Ashraf by al-Baladhuri, the genealogies of the nobles. Today, inshallah, we are going to be taking a look at Imam al-Hasan's life, and that is going to be a source we are going to. Firstly, was Imam al-Hasan a man who loved to get married? Yes, absolutely. Someone says, why? Well, first of all, let's look at his grandfather, Rasulullah. Was Rasulullah a man who loved to get married? Yes. There's a very famous hadith from Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa, and I believe it is recorded in Shaykh al-Saduq's books, as well as I think in al-Kafi. Rasulullah said, there are only two things I love in your world, perfume and women. Shaykh al-Saduq explains this, I believe in Kitab al-Khisal. He says, there are some people who like to attack Islam by saying, look, your prophet loves women. But we know that Rasulullah, when he says, I love perfume and women, he means I love my wives. He means I love what is halal, not what is haram. Is there something wrong with this? Is there something immoral about someone loving his wives? Absolutely not. There's nothing immoral about that. Many prophets of Allah before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam were known, for example, for having multiple wives. When it comes to Imam al-Hasan, before we even take a look into his marriages, we have to ask ourselves a question. When we're looking at what is immoral versus what is immoral, what can an imam do versus what he can't do? Are we basing it off of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or are we basing it off of our own societal norms? In our society, many of us, and subhanAllah, I've addressed this many times in the past, many of us, for example, we have people who are like, no, a man shouldn't marry 4 wives. You can't do that. What do you mean I can't do that? Allah says I can do it. No, you can't do that anymore. Says who? I didn't know that Sharia law has an expiration date. Where do we get this from? That's your culture. You grew up in the West. You've allowed the culture of the non-believers to affect the way you think. But don't try to subject the Imam to that. Don't try to impose your morality on the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. For the Ahlul Bayt, we believe that Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba is ma'soom. That means that if we see any report indicating the Imam did something haram, that's when we say, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. So we do have reports that say Imam al-Hasan was a man who loved to get married, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. His brother Imam al-Hussein, for example, Imam al-Hussein also married multiple times. He married 3 times, his three famous marriages. Inshallah, at another date, we'll go over Imam al-Hussein's bio as well, and we'll go into that. But when it comes to Imam al-Hasan, salamullahi alayh, I have done some research, and I have come to the conclusion there are 5 confirmed wives of Imam al-Hasan. And then he has the Ummahat al-Walad. Ummahat Walad is a term used for slave women that have given birth to children. So Imam al-Hasan had 5 confirmed women that he married, and then the Ummahat Walad, that is a number we don't know. And then there are the possibilities of women he married that we don't know of. So the first woman that Imam al-Hasan married is Salma or Zaynab, the daughter of Imir al-Qais. So Salma, the daughter of Imir al-Qais, this story is a very interesting one. And it is recorded by al-Baladuri in his book Ansab al-Ashraf. He records it in, and I'm using the famous print, the popular print of the book, the one by Dar al-Fikr, volume 2, when he goes over the marriages of Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi, Imam Ali and his children. He tells this famous story. Imr al-Qais al-Kalbi was the leader of a very popular tribe in Syria, Bani Kalb. So Bani Kalb is divided into multiple branches, some of you may know. Some of the famous Kalbis of history, probably the most famous one is the Prophet's adopted son, Zayd ibn Haritha. He was from Bani Kalb. So this tribe, one of their leaders in Syria was Imr al-Qais ibn Adi. Imr al-Qais was a Christian, and he came from Syria to Medina, and this was during the Khilafah of Umar. So he came to Umar, and he said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, what is Islam? And so Umar explains Islam to him, and he says, I want to accept Islam. So when he accepted Islam, Umar gave him a flag. He said, you are confirmed as the chief of your people, and in battle you will lead them. And so Imr al-Qais takes this banner, and he's ready to leave. He's ready to go back to Syria. And so as he's leaving, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi and his 2 sons, Hassan and Hussein, stop him. And so Imam Ali says to him, Ya Am, this is the leader, the chief of a powerful tribe in Syria. Imam Ali calls him uncle. He says, Ya Am, I am Ali ibn Abi Talib, and these are my 2 sons. These are the 2 grandsons of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa through his daughter Fatimah. We would like to establish marital ties with you. And so Imr al-Qais was overjoyed. So he gave Imam Ali one of his daughters as a wife. He gave one to Imam al-Hasan and one to Imam al-Hussein. Imam Ali's wife, I believe her name was Muhayya or Mahaya. Muhayya, she gave birth to a daughter with Imam Ali. And this girl died when she was very young. And both Baladuri and Tabari record that when she was a young girl, she used to go to the masjid. And so the people would ask her, they would say to her, what tribe is your mother from? And so she would say, oh. And so in Arabic, oh, that is the way you pronounce the sound that a dog makes when it barks. And so she's basically saying, my mother is from Bani Kalb. But she died when she was very young. Imam al-Hasan married Salma, or some reports say her name was Zaynab. Imam al-Hussein married Rabab. Now Rabab, you've all heard of Rabab. Correct? Rabab, we always bring her up during the discussions on Ashura, because Rabab is the mother of Sayyidah Sukaina, salamullahi alayha. And there are reports that say Imam al-Hussein loved Rabab and Sukaina so much that he even had lines of poetry. And one of the poems he wrote, he says, there is no house more beloved to me other than the house in which Sukaina and Rabab reside. Imam al-Hasan married Rabab's older sister, Salma or Zaynab. However, this marriage produced no children. And some scholars believe, I remember Madelung brings up, he's like, he may have divorced her, but this is probably not true, because he doesn't cite a report for it. There is no report that says that Imam al-Hasan divorced her. So it's more likely that simply because they didn't have children together. Some people assume that they didn't that their marriage did not last long. That's fine. It makes sense that a man would marry a woman. They don't have children together, but they stay together. This was Imam al-Hasan's first marriage. And as you can tell, Imam al-Hasan would have been a young adult at the time. This was during the Khilafah of Umar. His second marriage is probably his most famous. And this one is unfortunately, or shall I say, infamous. His second marriage was to a woman known as bint al-Ash'ath ibn Qais al-Kindiyah. Where do we even start with this family? In order to explain this marriage, I have to explain to you what tribe this woman comes from. Ju'dah comes from a tribe known as Bani Kindah. Bani Kindah was an extremely powerful tribe from Yemen. Extremely powerful. So powerful that Rasulullah ﷺ, during his lifetime, arranged a marriage to marry a Kindi woman, who was the sister of al-Ash'ath ibn Qais. But he died before the marriage could be consummated. And this story it's a polemic. There's a whole, bunch of drama involved in this one, and we can't get into it at the moment. But al-Ash'ath ibn Qais, who is the leader of Bani Kindah, is recorded in Tarikh al-Tabari. I unfortunately don't have a scan for this, but if you want, I believe it's in volume 9. It's like the last years of the Prophet's life. Banu Kindah came to the mosque of Rasulullah, and their leader was al-Ash'ath. They came in a delegation. Many prominent leaders of prominent tribes, this is the way they would accept Islam. They would come to Rasulullah as the heads of delegations. So al-Ash'ath came, and him and his men were wearing silk. And so Rasulullah asked them, he said, "Have you accepted Islam?" So he said, "Yes, Ya Rasulullah." He said, "Then why are you wearing silk in our mosque?" So they immediately took the silk from their heads and they threw it aside. This is Ju'dah's father, al-Ash'ath. He was the chief of the Kindites, of Bani Kindah. Al-Ash'ath is a Sahabi because he met Rasulullah. But let's go over what an outstanding Sahabi he was. The moment Rasulullah died, what does al-Ash'ath do? He apostates. Irtad. He apostated from Islam. In Islam, what is the punishment for someone who apostates? You all know the punishment. I don't need to mention it to you. Al-Ash'ath, when he apostated from Islam, he led Muslim troops into battle. And so the Muslims had to, he didn't just apostate and then just go back to where he came from. Al-Ash'ath apostated and he fought the Muslims. He fought against the Muslims. And so the Muslims, after fighting him for a while, they finally cornered him. They cornered him in a castle in Yemen. And so the story is recorded. This is al-Ash'ath's bio from the Encyclopedia of Islam, which does a good job of summarizing these events. Al-Ash'ath, when they cornered him, I believe it was Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, who was one of Abu Bakr's military commanders, he cornered him in this castle. So al-Ash'ath tries to negotiate. He says, "Look, I'll surrender this castle. I'll surrender to you. We'll lay down our arms if you promise us safe passage." And so Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl is like, "Okay, we'll do that." So they sign the agreement. Al-Ash'ath forgets to put his name on the agreement. When Ikrimah sees the paper, I remember the phrase he uses. He says, "Alhamdulillah, who has caused your star to fall." He's like, "Alhamdulillah that you slipped up and now I've got you." And so Ikrimah wants to kill him. He's like, "He's an apostate. He fought against us. He should be killed." I love how no one brings up, it's like, "But he's a Sahabi. But he's a Sahabi. Adalat al-Sahaba. The Sahaba. We can't kill him even though he apostated and fought against the Muslims." So al-Ash'ath, he's very nearly killed. But some of the commanders in the army, they're like, no, send him to Abu Bakr. When they send him to Abu Bakr, the Khalifa, famous for fighting the apostates, what does he do with al-Ash'ath? He not only forgives him and cuts him loose, he marries him to his sister, Farwa bint Abi Quhafa. SubhanAllah, the Khalifa who's famous for fighting the apostates is not only freeing apostates, but he's making them his in-laws. Al-Ash'ath, it is recorded that when he was freed, what did he do? He got up and he went into the market of Medina and he started cutting the humps off of camels. And so the people were like, "Ash'ath, have you apostated again? Have you lost your mind?" He's like, no, guys, this is how we celebrate a wedding in my country. And this story is recorded in Al-Mu'jam al-Kabir by al-Tabarani with a sahih chain. This is Ju'dah's father. Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais, through his marriage with Farwa, had a few children. One of them is Ju'dah. One of them is Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath. And another one, I forget his name. What was the third one's name? SubhanAllah, I have trouble remember the names of Mal'uneen sometimes. But let's take a look at what these people ended up doing. One of them, Ju'dah, we all know what she's infamous for. She poisoned Imam al-Hasan. Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath, what did he do? Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath is one of the people who fought against Muslim ibn Aqil in Kufa and took him prisoner to Ibn Ziyad. The other brother, the other son of al-Ash'ath, fought against Imam al-Hussein at Karbala. What an amazing family tree, right? And I remember the words of Mus'ab ibn Zubair when he was fighting Mukhtar. He managed to defeat Mukhtar in battle. He said, what an amazing victory this was. If only Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath had survived. If only Ibn al-Ash'ath didn't die during the battle. It's like Mukhtar may have lost that one particular battle, but he had managed to kill one of the killers of Imam al-Hussein. This was towards the end of his reign. So like, subhanAllah, the father is a murtad and a hypocrite, one of the biggest hypocrites in Imam Ali's time. And his daughter poisons Imam al-Hassan, and his sons fight against Imam al-Hussein and Muslim ibn Aqil. So it's Sahaba, ba'ad. He's a Sahaba. Anyway, by the way, I'll tell you just one quick story about him during the time of Imam Ali. There is a story narrated in Siyar A'lam al-Nubala. It says that once he came to Imam Ali's, where Imam Ali was working, and he had a discussion with Imam Ali, but the discussion escalated to the point where al-Ash'ath was threatening to kill Imam Ali. And so Imam Ali said to him, he says, are you threatening me with death? You think I'm afraid of you? Imam Ali says, bring me a knife and bring me some rope. I'll tie him up, I'll kill him myself. And so a group of Yemenis begged Imam Ali. They're like, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, he doesn't mean it, he made a mistake. And this story, of course, is in Siyar A'lam al-Nubala, in the bio of al-Ash'ath ibn Qais. SubhanAllah, we're not going to get into a Adalat al-Sahaba discussion, but I don't need to explain to you how this is problematic. How did Imam al-Hassan marry Ja'dah? How did someone like Imam al-Hassan end up with a woman like Ja'dah? Imam al-Hassan probably married Ja'dah around the time Amir al-Mu'mineen moved his capital to Kufa. When Imam Ali came to Kufa, he really wanted to establish an alliance with one of the powerful tribes of Yemen. Because Imam Ali is about to go to war. Before you go to war, you got to strengthen the alliances. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi, there are two versions regarding how Imam al-Hassan ended up with Ja'dah, and they are both recorded in Ansab al-Ashraf, volume 3. They're both recorded in Ansab al-Ashraf. They're narrated by al-Madani. And so there are two versions of the story. I will give you both of them. One version of the story is that al-Ash'ath, he heard that Imam Ali had asked for the hand of the daughter of Sa'id ibn al-Qais. He wanted to marry the daughter of Sa'id ibn al-Qais, who was called Imran. He wanted to marry her to Imam al-Hassan. When al-Ash'ath heard about this, he went to Sa'id ibn al-Qais and he said to him, no, don't marry her to al-Hassan. Marry her to my son Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath, who we mentioned earlier. So he stole the alliance for himself. Then al-Ash'ath invited Imam al-Hassan over for dinner. Imam al-Hassan comes over for dinner. While Imam al-Hassan is eating, a woman comes in and serves him food. And so Imam al-Hassan sees her. And so al-Ash'ath says to Imam al-Hassan, he says to him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, this is my daughter Ja'dah, and she has never served a man before you. She has never served a man outside her family before you. And so Imam al-Hassan went home, told his father Amir al-Mu'mineen, and so Amir al-Mu'mineen said to him, my son, you should marry her. And so Imam Ali, organized the marriage between Ja'dah and Imam al-Hassan. That is one version. The second version is that Imam Ali salamullahi alayhi once sent to al-Ash'ath, he says, I want you to ask for the daughter of Sa'id ibn Qais. I want you to ask for her hand for my son al-Hassan. So al-Ash'ath, he's supposed to go ask for her hand for Imam al-Hassan. What does he do? He goes to the girl's family and asks for her hand for his son Muhammad. When Imam Ali heard this, you know what he said to him? He said to him, qabaht, you've done something ugly. Or in Arabic, the other word, khunt. You have deceived, you have used deception. You were supposed to ask for her hand for my son, and you asked for her hand for your son. So what did al-Ash'ath do? He said, but I have a better idea. How about you marry him to my daughter? Imam Ali salamullahi alayhi considered his situation. If he rejected this proposal, all of the Kindites would turn against him. And if you read Madalong's book, when he's discussing how Imam Ali was preparing for the war with Muawiyah at Siffin, he says al-Ash'ath, because he wanted command of the army, and Imam Ali had given it to someone else, he very nearly switched sides and joined Muawiyah. So in this situation, what choice did Imam Ali and Imam al-Hassan have? Imam al-Hassan salamullahi alayhi married Ja'dah. And this is how Imam al-Hassan ended up with that horrible woman. Ja'dah bint al-Ash'ath, as we've mentioned, She is most infamous for what? For poisoning Imam al-Hasan. Why did she poison Imam al-Hasan? As in Imam al-Hasan, when we read about his life, Imam al-Hasan is honestly one of the kindest people you will ever meet. Imam al-Hasan, there is a story about him. I don't want to get too off track, so we'll go over this quickly. Imam al-Hasan, there is a man who came to him. He said to him, you know, you have blackened the faces of the believers. This is after the peace treaty with Muawiyah. Imam al-Hasan was in Medina. Imam al-Hasan, you know what he said to him? He said to him, we are the Ahlul Bayt, through whom Allah guided you and through whom He has saved you. Amir al-Mu'mineen Salamullahi alayhi told me the days and nights would not pass until Bani Umayyah come to power. So I knew that their coming to power was inevitable. I signed that peace treaty because I was trying to save your life. Imam al-Hasan Salamullahi alayhi, what does the narration say he did? He says he was milking a camel at the moment. So he milked the camel and he gave the milk to the man who had said to him what? He said to him, you have blackened the faces of the believers. This is the kindness of Imam al-Hasan. As in, even the people who are criticizing him, who are insulting him, mocking him to his face, Imam al-Hasan is telling him, you don't understand, you don't have the big picture. Slow down, calm down. Let me explain to you. That is the way an Imam acts with his followers. That is the way the Imam of the Muslim should be. And when we compare our second Khalifa to their second Khalifa, the difference is day and night, isn't it? Imam al-Hasan Salamullahi alayhi, when we look at the reasons behind why Ju'dah poisoned him, we see something that is very ugly. What do we see? We see that the reason why this woman poisoned Imam al-Hasan is that Muawiyah sent her a letter. It says, if you poison al-Hasan, I will marry you to Yazid and I will give you 100,000 dirhams. And there are some narrations that give other numbers. But the point is, she was offered money. She was offered money and marriage to Yazid. Subhanallah. I thought the Arabs were supposed to be good merchants. I thought they were supposed to be good at trade. I have never seen an Arab make such a horrible decision in terms of trade. You traded marriage with Imam al-Hasan, Sayyid Shababi Ahl al-Jannah, for marriage to Yazid. It's a tijara, we would say. What a horrible deal you have accepted. What's funny is, after Imam al-Hasan, after he had passed, after he was poisoned, Ju'dah was like, where's my husband? I want to marry Yazid. I want to be the princess. What did Muawiyah say to her? He said, you really think I'm going to trust someone like you with my son after what you did to the Prophet's son? You poisoned the Prophet's grandson. What do you makes you think my son is safe with you? And so Ju'dah, she was married, other men married her, but people, this is recorded in Rabi'ul Abrar by Zamakhshari, he says that up until the end of her life, her kids would play in the streets, and you know what people would shout at them? The other kids would shout at them, you are the sons of the wife, of the husband killer. You are the sons of the woman who killed her own husband. Someone asked the question. It says, why does someone like Imam al-Hasan end up with someone like this? Well, look at Nabi Allah Nuh. Look at Nabi Allah Lut. Look at Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Allah Azza wa Jal tests his awliya in all sorts of ways. Some people he tests them with the sword. Some people he tests them with the ummah around them. Others he tests them in their own house. But we know something very important. Allah does not burden a soul with more than it can bear. And this speaks to the strength of character of Imam al-Hasan, as he had one of his worst enemies under his own roof, but even then he never disrespected her, he never hit her, he never, for example, did some of the things we see other people would do with their spouse if they step out of line. Imam al-Hasan Halim, he has forbearance. But let's move on to some of his other marriages. So that's two marriages we've gone over. Salma bint Imir al-Qais, or Zaynab bint Imir al-Qais al-Kalbiya, Ju'dah bint al-Ash'ath ibn Qais al-Kindiya. Now, his third wife, Bashir bint Abi Mas'ud Uqba ibn Amr ibn Tha'lab al-Khazrajiyya. That is a mouthful. Some people just call her Bashir bint Abi Mas'ud al-Ansari, or al-Badri, because her father, Abu Mas'ud Uqba ibn Amr, was a Sahabi, and he was an Ansari. There aren't any exact narrations on how this marriage took place, but it definitely happened because it produced children. Imam al-Hasan had children with Bashir. Also, this marriage most likely took place in Kufa. It happened after Imam Ali and his family moved to Kufa. What information do we have? Bashir's father, as we said, Abu Mas'ud al-Ansari al-Badri. And the Sunnis have a huge discussion about whether he's an Ansari, and there's a hadith in Bukhari, and we're not going to get into it. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, Salamullahi alayhi, when he came to Kufa, there were various factions in Kufa. One faction was against Uthman, who had called for the overthrow of Uthman. These people were mostly Imam Ali Shia, right? The most famous of them, Malik al-Ashtar, right? Ammar ibn Yasir, Hijr ibn Adi al-Kindi. But there was another group. There was a group that was calling for either neutrality or they were defending Uthman. One of these people was this man, Abu Mas'ud al-Ansar al-Badri. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi, before heading to Siffin, he appointed this man as the governor of Kufa. While he was the governor of Kufa, what he ended up doing, he is said to have, recorded to have gotten up and given speeches, and he used to tell people, he used to tell the Kufans, he says to them, "O people of Kufa, if Ali wins against Muawiyah, it is not a victory. If Muawiyah wins against Ali, it is not a victory. The only victory is if Allah creates peace and understanding between the Muslims. If we have unity, because we all know the most important thing is unity." And I wish I could draw a rainbow for you as I talk about unity and the rainbow between the two clouds. Happiness and sunshine and unity. And, unity worked out really well for us at Siffin, didn't it? Worked out really well. When Imam Ali got back to Kufa, he is said to have said the following to him. He said to him, "You are a chicken and an old man who has lost his sound mind." Also, while he was governor of Kufa, he famously got up and started telling people how Uthman was not a bad guy. Uthman was just misunderstood. So when Imam Ali got back, Imam Ali was not too pleased with him. He fired him. He removed him as the governor of Kufa. And so he angrily went to Mecca to perform a pilgrimage. By the way, in case someone was wondering, yes, this is recorded in the Sunni sources. This is Musannaf ibn Abi Shaybah, where Imam Ali calls the man. He says, فَلَمَّا قَدَمَ عَلِي قَالَ لَهُ أَنْتَ الْقَائِلْ مَا بَلَغَنِي عَنْكَ يَا فَرُوخ, you chicken, إِنَّكَ شَيْخ قَدْ ذَهَبَ عَقْلُكَ. You are an old man who has lost his mind. You've lost your mind if you think you can go up on my minbar praising Uthman and telling people that Ali winning against Muawiyah is not really a victory. In any case, Imam al-Hasan salamullah alayh married this man's daughter. Any details about, too many details about their marriage, but it did produce it produced 3 children. So one of them is Zayd ibn al-Hasan. Zayd ibn al-Hasan, Shaykh al-Mufid discusses him in Kitab al-Irshad. He never claimed imamah, and he was by all accounts a good Sayyid and a good man, a righteous man. And his 2 sisters, al-Hasan and al-Husayn. This is Imam al-Hasan's 3rd marriage. 4th marriage, Khawla bint Manzur ibn Zabban al-Fazariya, or Mandhur, I'm sorry. Khawla bint Mandhur, her story is very interesting. And I love this story because it demonstrates something very interesting about Imam al-Hasan's character. Khawla al-Fazariya, she had been married before her marriage to Imam al-Hasan. So she went to Imam al-Hasan and she said, "Ya ibn Rasulullah, I am placing the matter in your hands. So when a woman is divorced, she no longer needs her father's permission to get married. It's up to her. The choice is hers." But so what is she doing? She's going to Imam al-Hasan. She says, "The choice is yours. Whoever you think I should marry, I will marry." And so Imam al-Hasan, what did he do? He married her to himself. So she became his 4th wife. Khawla, when she was married to Imam al-Hasan, her father, Mandhur ibn Zabban al-Fazariya, was the chief of a tribe. He's from the tribe of Bani Fazara, which is a very powerful Qaisi tribe. And so when he heard the news, like, dude, Imam al-Hasan married your daughter, he was angry. Why would someone be angry that their daughter married Imam al-Hasan? He was angry. Do you know why he was angry? Because he didn't ask me. I am the chief of a tribe. Before you marry my daughter, you must ask me first. So I am upset now. I am angry, and I'm going to do something about it. And subhanAllah, I remember, when I read this story for the first time, I'm like, man, Arabs don't change. The Arabs change. They build buildings, they drive cars, right? They have the host the World Cup, but some things never change. One of the things that never changes about Arabs is that some Arabs still get angry for petty reasons. So this man, he was like, my daughter, how dare al-Hasan ibn Ali marry her without asking me for permission? It was like, Habibi, Sharia law dictates that she doesn't have to ask you for permission. Most people would jump for joy at the idea of being married to Rasulullah's grandson. What's wrong with you? So when he did this, of course, when the chief of a tribe gets angry, who else gets angry? The rest of the tribe, the allies of the tribe. So he gathered in the mosque. They gathered in the mosque and he had his sword. They all stood in solidarity with him. And so when Imam al-Hasan heard the news, what did he do? He took Khawla to him and he told him, I am divorcing your daughter. She is free to go. She's yours. And so when she was returned to her father, what did her father say? Her father, obviously, he made a big show, he made a big deal out of it. Imam al-Hasan, instead of escalating, what did Imam al-Hasan do? Imam al-Hasan de-escalated. Imam al-Hasan is above such petty arguments and fighting and stuff like this. Imam al-Hasan is like, if this is what will make you happy, go ahead. You can have her back. When this happened, Khawla said to her father, you have an issue with me being married to him? Have you not heard that Rasulullah said about him, he is Sayyid Shababi Ahl al-Jannah? It's like, you couldn't ask for a better in-law, and you created all this drama, and now you separated between me and him? He said to her, be patient. If the man wants you, he'll come back. Imam al-Hasan salamullahi alayhi came back with his brother Hussein, with his cousin Abdullah ibn Ja'far, and with his uncle Ibn Abbas. And he said to him, okay, you want me to ask for permission to marry your daughter? I'm asking for permission to marry your daughter. And so the man accepted. And this story is recorded by Abu al-Faraj in his Kitab al-Aghani. And from this marriage is very important. From this marriage came Imam al-Hasan's most famous son, who is al-Hasan al-Muthanna, al-Hasan ibn al-Hasan. Al-Hasan ibn al-Hasan, during the battle of Karbala, it is said that he lost his arm. So he was wounded and he was very nearly killed. But some of the Bani Fazara from his mother's tribe said to Umar ibn Sa'ad, they said, don't kill him, he's related to us. We will protect him. Imam al-Hasan, most of his famous descendants come by way of al-Hasan al-Muthanna. And so this marriage is, for that reason, this marriage is very important. What other reasons is this marriage important? Why do I love this story so much? First of all, Imam al-Hasan is portrayed, some people want you to think he's a womanizer. Imam al-Hasan, he just wants to marry and divorce. Question, if Imam al-Hasan is a womanizer, why on earth would Imam al-Hasan go through all this to get his wife back? As in most people imagine, if he's a womanizer, he's married to the woman, her father causes a big deal, he just divorces her, goes finds another one. Why would a womanizer go through the process of giving her up and then going to ask for her hand again just to make her father happy? Because most womanizers we know don't care about what the father thinks about what you do with his daughter. This story demonstrates Imam al-Hasan's outstanding akhlaq as well as his nobility. This is the akhlaq of a nobleman. This is the way a nobleman acts. This is the way a gentleman acts. Let's move on to wife number 5. Wife number 5 is Ishaq bint Talha ibn Ubaidillah. Talha ibn Ubaidillah, you've all heard of him. He was the Sahabi, this one who died fighting against Imam Ali, betrayed by his own ally, Marwan ibn al-Hakam. And funny enough, when Marwan shot him, what did Marwan say? He said, after today, I will not demand vengeance for Uthman. This man is responsible for killing Uthman. Subhanallah, the man who comes to fight Ali ibn Abi Talib demanding vengeance for Uthman turns out to be Uthman's killer. What a funny story. In any case, Ishaq bint Talha, the daughter of Talha, also married Imam al-Hasan. And after Imam al-Hasan was assassinated, she married Imam al-Hussein. In any case, Ishaq bint Talha, there are some interesting stories about her. Number 1, Abu al-Faraj al-Isfahani, who we've used a few times now, he's the author of the Kitab al-Aghani and the Kitab al-Maqatil al-Talibiyin. Abu al-Faraj records something very interesting. He says the women of Bani Taym were known for their beauty and for their bad akhlaq. They were very, very beautiful. If you caught sight of one, you would want to marry one immediately. They were famous for this among Quraysh. They were very beautiful, but they did not have good akhlaq. And it is narrated by Abu al-Faraj. He says that Ishaq's akhlaq were so bad, they were so terrible, that when Imam al-Hussein was married to her, she once got pregnant and gave birth to a baby without talking to Imam al-Hussein once. So this story is interesting. I personally reject it, and I'm going to explain why. By the way, here's the source. It's from Kitab al-Aghani. We have to be munsafin. If we're going to reject a source, we still have to show it. I reject this story for 2 reasons. Number 1, this story comes without a chain. Abu al-Faraj just mentions it. He says, it is said that al-Hussein, Ishaq, when she was married, her akhlaq was so bad. She had a baby, she had a whole pregnancy, and had a whole baby without talking to her husband once. That's how mean these Taymi women are. They're beautiful, but they're mean. So first of all, he narrates it without a chain, which is problematic. Secondly, he's basically promoting a stereotype. The stereotype about the women of Beni Taym is that they're really beautiful, but they're mean. Just because that's a stereotype doesn't mean it applies to the entire tribe. In fact, what is interesting is there is a musnad report, a connected report. Abu al-Faraj, he narrates this in the same book, but in a different volume. He narrates that when Imam al-Hassan was dying, he said to Imam al-Hussein, he says, "My brother, I approve of you marrying this woman." Because, in Islam, when if a woman, her husband dies, believe if her husband dies, after the iddah, after she has observed the iddah, she can marry his brother. So if this woman was a woman with bad akhlaq, as Abu al-Faraj has, said is the rumor, is the popular myth, is the popular story, why would Imam al-Hussein tell him, he says to him, "My brother, I approve of you marrying this woman. I approve of you marrying Ishaq." So even though, she comes from the same tribe as Abu Bakr, the same tribe as Talha, right? Her father was one of Amir al-Mu'mineen's enemies. We have to remember that, we can't stereotype an entire tribe. Correct? We can't, as historians, we doing a critical analysis of history, you don't want to fall into that trap of just going off of a stereotype to judge someone's character, correct? After all, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, salamullahi alayhi, was one of the great champions of Amir al-Mu'mineen, one of the great Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi, and he's also from Beni Taym. So, in any case, when it comes to Ishaq bin Talha, Imam al-Hassan voiced approval with her, and he had children with her. And later, when she married Imam al-Hussein also had children with her. This marriage produced with Imam al-Hassan, salamullahi alayhi, his son al-Hussein ibn al-Hassan, who was called al-Athram, and his brother Talha ibn al-Hassan, and their sister Fatimah bint al-Hassan. Now, this is interesting. Fatimah bint al-Hassan is the wife of Imam al-Sajjad. But some historians, there's a difference of opinion. Shaykh al-Mufid believes she was the daughter of Ishaq bint Talha. Other historians disagree. They say no. Fatimah bint al-Hassan, right, the wife of Imam Sajjad, the mother of Imam al-Baqir, she was the daughter of an Walad. Ishaq is not her mother, and Allah knows best. These are 5 confirmed marriages. There are 2 other marriages that I'm going to go over. These 2 marriages, there are some problems with them. And we'll go over one. Hafsa bint Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Bakr, the granddaughter of Abu Bakr. Al-Madaini narrates with, and I'll go over the chain after narrating the story. He says that he married this woman, Hafsa bint Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Bakr, but her cousin, al-Mandhur ibn Zubayr, was in love with her. So what did he do? He spread a rumor about her. So Imam al-Hassan heard the rumor. What did he do? He divorced her. Right? Classic Imam al-Hassan, so easy to divorce, right? So then Asim, the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab, married Hafsa bint Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Bakr. Mandhur also spreads a rumor about her. And so Asim divorces her. And so then Mandhur proposes to her. But she refuses. After this incident, everyone found out. It's like, dude, Mandhur was the one who spread a rumor about her. So when Imam al-Hassan found out about this, you know what happened? He was so upset and he wanted to take her back, but he couldn't, because she was now, she had moved on, she was married. So he would come visit her with her nephew and they would talk to each other. They would, even though they're not married, they would talk. They would converse for a long time. This story is garbage. This story is garbage from both the metan, the content, as well as the sanad. Why is it garbage from the metan? Why on earth would Imam al-Hassan divorce his wife based off of a rumor? The Quran says, "Oh, you who believe," in the Ifk incident, what does it say? It says the believers, when a rumor reaches them, what do? They investigate. They don't just follow the rumor. Imam al-Hassan, is he a believer? Of course he's a believer. He's one of the masters of the believers. He's Sayyid Shababi Ahl al-Jannah. Secondly, the idea of Imam al-Hassan going to visit a married woman to talk to her, just to have a conversation. We wouldn't accept this story about a pious believer in our community, let alone Sayyid Shababi Ahl al-Jannah. But safe. We can't just reject a story because we don't like the content. We have to have an actual, historical reason. I'll give you a historical reason. I'll give you 3. First of all, this marriage did not produce any kids. We can tell if a marriage happened versus didn't happen. Usually, one of the ways we can tell is if it's recorded, we say, well, did it produce any children? This marriage did not produce any children. It's number one. Number two, there is only one chain of narration that says Imam al-Hasan married this woman at all. It would be one thing if we had multiple chains saying that the Imam was married to this woman. We'll say, yeah, this marriage actually took place. But this entire marriage, let alone the story that goes with it, the scandal that goes with it, is only narrated by one source, right? And it is here in al-Madaini transmits it in his book Ansab al-Ashraf. Number three, this chain is weak. One of the people in the chain is ungraded. He's mentioned, but no one mentions anything good or bad about him. The person who narrates the story, Isa ibn Abi Harun, this is the only hadith he ever narrated, and he is majhul. So this story is 99% a forgery. The only thing that this story needs to be 100% forgery is if the guy told you I made it up. That's the only way you could be any more certain this story is false. But this story demonstrates something. You see where this idea, this myth that Imam al-Hasan is a man who divorces easily comes from? He's a man who loves to marry and divorce. He just wants to, he's marrying for pleasure. This is one of the examples. Give you another example. Right, another story. Hind bint Suhail ibn Amr. Suhail ibn Amr is a very famous, I believe he was Suhail ibn Amr or his father. He was a famous Qurayshi opponent of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Story goes that when Imam al-Hasan, salamullahi alayhi, married her, he married her, but her ex-husband had some money with her. So Imam al-Hasan said to him, he's like, if you want, I can divorce her and you can take her back. So the guy's like, no, I just want my money. So he gave her the money. And so they used to ask her, because she had been married 3 times, who was your best husband? She would say the Sayyid of them all was al-Hasan. The most generous of them was Ibn Amr. And the dearest to me was Abdurrahman ibn Attab. This story is completely chainless. There's no chain for it at all. It's just al-Madaini. He says balagani. However, it is probable that Imam al-Hasan married her, because there are reports that say some people accused her of poisoning him. So she was one of his wives, but this whole story about her and her ex-husband, that story is just balagani, al-Madaini. And al-Madaini, a lot of things balagahu, we would say. A lot of things just simply reached him. By the way, I want to go over a quick point, inshallah, and I hope I'm not boring any of you guys, you brothers and sisters. When it comes to history, some of you may be thinking, but safe, in history, we're not supposed to be strict on the chains. You're right. We're not being strict on the chain. We're looking for tawatur. We're looking for multiple sources confirming a marriage or confirming a story. If I have a story about Imam al-Hasan, salamullahi alayhi, that comes by way of only one chain, from one unknown narrator, or balagani, al-Madani is like, I heard it. Who did you hear it from? That does not build tawatur. That does not build a complete narrative. That's an ahad. That is a singular report. We cannot base our understanding of history, especially the marriages of an imam, based off of singular reports. Wouldn't you agree? Especially when these stories, some of these sound like fairy tales. So we've named 7 wives of Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba, salamullahi alayh. One of them probably did not happen. Hafsa bint Abdurrahman ibn Abi Bakr, that one probably did not happen at all. And the last one, Hind bint Suhail, probably happened, but we don't really have any details about it. And it didn't produce any children. Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba, salamullahi alayhi, also had children from various slave women. Probably his most famous son, after al-Hasan al-Muthanna, is al-Qasim ibn al-Hasan, salamullahi alayhi. Al-Qasim was the son of a slave woman. Umar ibn al-Hasan was also the son of a slave woman. Abdullah, who is sometimes called Abu Bakr ibn al-Hasan, and Abdul Rahman ibn al-Hasan. These are all mentioned by Shaykh al-Mufid in his Kitab al-Irshad. SubhanAllah, I would like to point out something interesting. You know that tired polemic that our opponents like to use where they're like, oh, if Ali hated these people, why would he name their kids about them? Well, we would ask, that's a wonderful question. Why would Imam al-Hasan name his son Abdul Rahman? Could it be that maybe because names are simply names and they do not indicate love or hatred for a particular person? Allahu alam, right? We'll leave that to you. We'll leave that to you guys to think about. But in any case, this is from Kitab al-Irshad. In the final section on Imam al-Hasan's life, he lists all of his wives and his children. Let's take a look at 2 more things, inshallah, and then we will wrap this up. Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba, salamullahi alayhi, there is a hadith about him in Kitab al-Kafi. in Kitab al-Kafi, in the book of divorce. This is a very important hadith. The hadith comes with a good chain, and it says, عن أبي عبد الله عليه السلام إمام الصادق قال أن عليا قال وهو على المنبر لا تزوج الحسن فإنه رجل مطلاق. Imam Ali, once in Kufa, got up on the pulpit and he said, do not marry my son al-Hassan because he is a man who divorces easily. Some people reject this hadith, even though the hadith comes by way of a good chain. And it is even recorded in the books of our opponents. Some people reject this story. Me personally, I really don't like rejecting a hadith from a ma'soom, especially if the hadith has a good chain. Is there an explanation for this? Absolutely, there is an explanation. Number one, what is a mitlaq? A mitlaq is someone who divorces easily. Is there something wrong with being a mitlaq? No. Nothing wrong with being a mitlaq. Nothing wrong with being a mitlaq. We have hadith in al-Kafi says that Allah hates the mitlaq al-dhawaq. Mitlaq al-dhawaq. What does mitlaq al-dhawaq mean? Mitlaq, someone who divorces easily. Dhawaq, it literally means a taster, right? A taster. You know that person who goes to the buffet, he's tasting all the food? You know, you were a kid, you go to the ice cream, you're allowed to get a free sample, so you taste all of them. Allah Azza wa Jal dislikes the person who is a serial divorcer, the person who is marrying and divorcing, just because, for example, he's looking for physical pleasure. He just wants a taste. There's nothing wrong with being a mitlaq, because what does the word mitlaq mean? It means someone who divorces. If someone has a reason for divorcing, is that okay? Yes, it's absolutely okay. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa is recorded to have gotten divorced. He divorced Hafsa and took her back, according to the books of our opponents. One of his wives, for example, on her wedding night, and this is recorded in our books as well as the books of our opponents, I believe it's in Tabaqat ibn Sa'ad, when the Prophet approached her, she said to him, A'udhu billahi mink, he divorced her. Another one of his wives, when Ibrahim salamullah alayhi, Ibrahim ibn Rasulullah, when Rasulullah's baby boy passed away, she commented, she said, if he was a prophet, Allah wouldn't have killed his son. Rasulullah divorced her. So just because someone has gotten divorced does not necessarily mean that this person was the problem. Perhaps the other person was the problem, because in al-Kafi, if we look at this chapter, it's the chapter of divorcing an uncooperative wife. Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba was raised by Rasulullah. He was raised by Amir al-Mu'mineen. He was raised by Sayyidah Fatimah. Imam al-Hasan is ma'soom. His standards for his wives are higher than the average man. They're higher than the average man. So it makes perfect sense that Imam al-Hasan salamullah alayhi, Amir al-Mu'mineen, would tell the people of Kufa, he would say, don't marry your daughters to my son. My son has high standards. If you can handle his standards, that's fine, but most of you can't. And we've seen, we've gone over the biographies of some of the people, some of Imam al-Hasan's in-laws. Imam al-Hasan, may Allah bless him for the patience he showed with them. But some of them we know were people, Imam al-Hasan is like, I can't do it. That's one point. Another point I want to bring up. When Abu Bakr and Umar came to ask for Fatima's hand, what did Rasulullah say to them? He said to them, she's too young. When Amir al-Mu'mineen came to ask for her hand, what did Rasulullah say? He accepted. So we'd say, when Rasulullah said she's too young, was he lying? We say, no. Rasulullah is saying she's too young for you. Imam al-Hasan, salamullah alayh, we can look at this hadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen and we can say he is a mitlaq, he would easily divorce with you people. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullah alayhi, the interesting thing is when you look at the rest of the hadith is a merit for Imam al-Hasan, because one man stood up, he said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, we will give him, and if he divorces, that's fine. He's the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa. Another version of the report says that when Amir al-Mu'mineen heard this man, who is a man from the tribe of Hamadan, Amir al-Mu'mineen said, his famous poem, he said, if I was put in charge of one of the doors of Jannah, I would open it and tell all of Hamadan, enter, all of you come in. So Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, there are many ways to interpret this hadith. One could say Imam Ali was testing the loyalty of the people. He was testing the loyalty of the people of Kufa. And one of them, we see this man from Hamadan, proved he was more than loyal, he was more than worthy. In any case, the editor of Kitab al-Kafi goes over this hadith. He does an outstanding job going over the various different interpretations. Some ulama, like al-Bahrani, remain silent. He says, I won't comment on this hadith. Others, for example, say, no, there's nothing wrong with this hadith. And that is the opinion I hold. There is no issue with saying Imam al-Hasan, for example, was a man who would divorce frequently, because he had his reasons. And we know that his reasons, in the eyes of Allah, are completely acceptable. And this teaches us a very valuable lesson. This is a lesson that I don't think our generation needs to learn as much as the one before. When a man or a woman is divorced, that does not necessarily mean they are a bad person. In fact, when you look at most of Rasulullah's wives, they were widows or women who had been divorced. Imam al-Hasan likewise, many of his wives had been divorced before.